Hey guys, today I'm out of the greenhouse because it's about 150 degrees in there, or at least it feels like it. But today I'm talking about grass cutting and a common problem whether you have a push mower or a riding mower, which I have actually I have two push mowers and one riding mower. And I've done this to one push mower and it works like magic. And that's a way to keep grass from sticking to the underside of your mowing, whatever kind of equipment you have, and it just repels it like magic, like two magnets. It just keeps it off of there. So there's a few things you need to do in preparation to make this work. One of them involves a wire brush and a thorough cleaning of the underside before you do this. So I'll show you how to do this step by step, and like I said, it works truly like magic in keeping your lawnmower clean. If you do have the type of grass that sticks no matter what, a very highly concentrated grass that has lots of moisture in it, even that will make a huge difference where you'll have minimal effort to keep the underside of your mowers clean. Now the first thing you want to do is you want to get a good working area, somewhere that's not going to make a huge mess, whether you're working on your driveway, sidewalk, or in this case my garage floor. You can take cardboard or maybe something like this plastic I buy in huge rolls, and I can put it under the lawnmower and I don't have to worry about making a huge mess on my garage. So make sure you put this down first before you start this procedure, because it can get really messy. Now the proper way to tip a push mower over is to tip it to the side away from your carburetor. In my case, my exhaust is on the opposite side from the carburetor, so you want to make sure you do it on the exhaust side so you don't have any oils or any problems collecting inside the engine and causing a problem with starting. So it could cause an issue there with starting and running the mower. So we're going to tip it this way away from the carburetor. As you can see, this is a fairly old lawnmower, but it's in really good shape compared to its age. It's well over 10 years, but I don't use it a lot. I use this for a lot of detail work. But what you want to do is you want to take a wire brush, and I've got two different sizes here, and we're going to clean as much as we can off there. Now I do tend to do this after each cutting, is I will wash out from under there as much as I can, and I try to put it and let it dry, and I never leave it outside because I want to minimize rust, even though there is some rust starting there. So we want to take our wire brush and clean as thoroughly as we can under there to make this process work. A little bit of grass back here and there, but this will make the biggest difference of all is proper cleaning of the underside of your mower before you do this process. Now this entire cleaning process could take a solid 20 to 30 minutes of really good cleaning. I'm using the large wire brush to get in the overall areas, and in the small cracks and crevices I'm using this small wire brush. I bought an entire kit of these that came in all sizes, from wire brushes about the size of a toothbrush all the way up to this right here. This is actually perfect. I'll put a link in the description to that kit, but it makes it super easy to get into the small cracks and crevices and get out any debris, because we want this lawnmower to be as rust-free and as clean as possible. Now if you're just doing this and you have a lot of grass built up, I would recommend doing a little bit of a pressure wash and allowing the lawnmower to dry completely. You can even spray some rubbing alcohol into there and then wipe it down carefully and leave it outside and just let everything evaporate so you have no moisture under there. That's one of the keys, is having zero moisture when you do this process. So just remember, cleaning the underside of the deck is extremely important. Get it as good as you can, because this process you may only have to do once every 2 to 4 years depending how much you use your mower. In this case, I probably will only have to do this once every 5 years. So I finished step one and I've cleaned very thoroughly underneath. I've got as much rust and debris out of there as I can. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to vacuum all this up and we can move on to the next step. Now for this next step, you're going to need a few things. You're going to need a really good drill, and you're going to need one of these cement mixers, and I'll show you why that is in just a second. You're going to need a really good pair of gloves to keep this product off your hands, because it is really messy. And rather than mixing it in its original container, I'm going to use this Lowe's 2-gallon bucket that I can clean later, and I don't have to worry so much about making a giant mess all over the garage floor. So you don't want to mix this in its original container because it's quite hard to do. It's like a brownie sitting in water. It's just very thick, and then on top of that is this liquid. So the product I'm talking about is slip plate, and this is a graphite lubricant that you paint onto the underside. Now there's a few steps in here you need to take, and there's a very special step I do that most people wouldn't think about. But we're going to take the product out of the can. I would set it inside of the bucket. We're going to take a screwdriver and open it, but just remember, if you try to mix this in here, it is very hard to do. If you take a paint stick and try to stir it, it's going to get all over the place. So I would recommend something like this, a good drill, and then a little cement mixer. You can see I've used this many times for the cement, and I'll clean this again later, but unfortunately I didn't clean enough cement off in the past when I was doing some grout work, and it's kind of gotten quite messy there. So I just would recommend doing your mixing in something like this, and do it on its slow speed on the drill. You don't want to do it on high speed because it could splash out and we get this stuff everywhere. So let's get a screwdriver and we'll get into this product, and I'll show you the best way to apply it. All right, I'm going to carefully remove this top. And like I said, you have a water-like consistency on top and then a solid sludge on the bottom half of it. So we're just going to carefully do that and then put it into our 2-gallon Lowe's bucket. And like I said, if you look down in there, you'll see half the can is like a solid material. It's not rock hard, but it is like a brownie. So you'll need to get something like a paint stick to pull it out of there into your secondary container. All right, and I'll try to make it where you can see this, but it really is, like I said, the top portion is a liquid, and then the bottom half is just like a fudge brownie. So you just want to carefully remove that out of there and try not to make a big mess, but it takes a little bit of effort to get it out of there. You're just going to kind of move it around and move it to the top of the can till we get it into our bucket. And you can see it's coming out there, but again, it is like a very, very thick brownie. That's exactly what it reminds me of. All right, again, remember with your drill, you don't want to have it on its fast setting. You want it on its slowest setting, so it'll just slowly mix this. All right, so once you've got it pretty well mixed, then you can move your drill up to a higher speed. But again, you want to make sure you hold the bucket because you don't want this to spill everywhere, and be very careful about angles. If you pull this drill back too far, it could shoot some of the material out of the bucket. So now you're going to want to paint this onto the underside of your lawnmower, and you're going to need a disposable brush. It's going to be basically a one-time use, because once you do this, this brush will no longer be usable. So just plan on using a brush that's rather inexpensive. You don't have to use one of the high-dollar paint brushes. But anyways, we're going to mix this a little bit, make sure we have no clumps in there. We'll have to break out our drill again, but it is extremely well mixed now. You can see there it's a lot thinner than it was. It was that brownie and liquid consistency there. So just remember, you need to make sure that it's well mixed, and by using the cement mixer, which you can buy online, and like I said, I put a link in the description, and a good drill, you can get this done really quickly. Now, before painting this on, we want to make sure we cover our belt if it's exposed like this. So you can take some paper towels and just kind of put it under your blades and everywhere that your belt is exposed, because we're focusing on all this outer area, so we're not concerned about the inner area of the lawnmower quite so much. So just make sure that you cover that, because we don't want a very slippery lawnmower belt, and you're going to have a problem if you do get some of this on there. So we just do that, and now we're going to take our paintbrush and we're going to start painting the underside of our push mower here. Now, before we move on to the last couple of steps I have in this, and we'll do a test of it as well, I will say that if you have a riding mower, I'll show you a device you can use that makes this super easy, that you don't have to worry about turning your lawnmower halfway over and trying to reach under there and do that. So it's something really simple, and I've had one for about 10 years, and it still works today like it did the day I took it out of the box. Now, according to the directions on the can itself, it says it can dry in 1 hour. I want to speed that up a little bit, but you could wait till the following day and you'd be assured it was dry. But if you want to speed that up a little bit, you can use a heat gun or hair dryer. I'm going to opt for option number 2 and just use a high velocity fan. Again, this does have some fumes, so you want to do this in a well ventilated area or even outside. So just make sure that you give it at least 1 hour to dry before you move on to your test. There's one more thing I want to show you about a full-size riding mower that you can use to make this possible. It's impossible to flip a mower like that on its side without doing some kind of damage. So I'll show you real quick a product I've had for well over a decade, and it's helped me so many times. I'm changing out blades and what I'm about to do during this process on my riding mower. So over 26 years, I've had 4 of these models. I've literally worn each one of them out. I donated one and I sold another at a very discounted price, but I've always been happy with Husqvarna and that particular brand. I've had other brands here and there that did not serve me well. If Honda made a mower, that would probably be the mower I would buy, but since the only Honda I know of that makes a riding mower was called the Black Max, they only sold those in the UK, so I opted for the second best option, I think, which is the Husqvarna. So let me show you how to do the same exact process on this without having to get up underneath the mower and literally hurt your arm while you're trying to do it. This device is something I've had, like I said, for close to probably 20 years, and it works great on helping me do things like changing blades, and in this case, it's going to help me paint the underside of the cutting deck. Now I did a slight adjustment on the lifts here because I wanted to make sure the tires didn't slip too far into the openings. It's just a hydraulic lift. It takes very little effort. I'm trying to make sure you got this on camera so I can see it. But basically you just do a nice slow pace there. I'm going to move the camera where you can see the lawnmower lifting, and it is just super easy to do. I'm just going to take it as high as it'll go to let you see that you could very easily get under there and do what we just talked about, the cleaning of the deck and then applying the graphite underneath. But if you do have a riding mower, you don't have to worry about not being able to do this process. If you got one of these lifts, I'm going to go all the way to the top with it and let you see exactly how high it will go, and it's very safe, and it's even got safety mechanisms in place to make sure it doesn't drop for any reason. I'm just going to keep going, and I want you to see exactly how high off the floor this is and how you could easily get underneath and do exactly what you need to do to make your lawnmower completely grass free each time you cut it. Now in the case of this one, I use this probably 2 times a week, and the underside is really dirty. So I'm going to say that if you do have a lawnmower you're using quite often, the first step will be pressure washing, and that's what this one's about to get, is an outdoor pressure washing. We're going to move the push mower outside, let it dry for about an hour, and then we'll run a test on some very wet grass. We've gotten rain at least every other day for the last month, so our grass is very, very filled with water, and it's a lot of moisture in it. So normally what would stick, you'll see that it makes a huge difference. Even if you have a very unusual type of grass that tends to stick, you still will see a huge difference with this, because you'll be able to take a hose pipe and you won't have to do a lot of washing, just a light rinse, and the grass will just come right off because of the graphite. Now before I take the lawnmower down, I wanted to show you that safety mechanism I'm talking about. There's a pin hole that you can put a pin in. I'm using a bolt because I misplaced the pin, but you can put that in there, and if for some reason your hydraulic jack fails, that will prevent it from going any further than that. It just will stop it. You'll run into this piece of metal, and so your lawnmower will not collapse. So if you're not familiar with this type of jack, it's really well made, and like I said, I've used it over and over and over on changing blades. I'll put a link in the description if you don't have one, a place in your area that you can buy one. And the brand on this, I forget what it was, but again, it's really well worth it if you do a lot of your own maintenance. Now I've got the fan running, and we're waiting that last 45 minutes for that graphite to dry on our push mower. But I want to show you another unusual way to use this product, this graphite, and that's on common garden tools. So we'll start with our shovel here, and I'm going to thoroughly clean any dirt off of it. Now next we want to dry our shovel and make sure there's no moisture on it. Just wipe it down really good there. And there's one added step I'm going to do, is I'm going to spray rubbing alcohol on the shovel so that liquids would evaporate as quickly as possible, and when we apply the graphite to our shovel, it will be very, very dry and very, very clean. Now this is something most people would not think about putting graphite on a shovel, but if you do a lot of yard work, something like this, once it's dry, it's perfectly safe around your plants in your garden, but it can make a huge difference in cleaning the tool. So you can just put a nice thick coat of the graphite all over your shovel, and then the next time you're digging in some really sticky, heavy clay, mud, or other debris, it'll just come right off. You don't have to go all the way up on the shovel, just around where the base of the shovel is. And again, the same process, both sides. And I did do a little bit of cleaning with our wire brush as well to make sure we got off any outstanding rust. And I've used the heck out of this shovel over the last few years. And if you could see the handle, you would see that there's a lot of work been done. So that is right there. Just kind of carefully spread it out and allow it to dry for about 1 hour. So when you go to wash it off next time, you won't have to do a thorough cleaning job. Just give it a light rinse and the mud will come right off. All right, I'm just going to carefully flip it over here, carburetor side up, muffler side down, to make sure we don't have any issues with oil leakage. We see a little bit of grass collecting there, but overall everywhere else is very clean. So this grass just got rained on this morning. In a matter of hours, I've cut it and it's very minimal problem, and I can just rinse that off with a hose pipe really easy. So this would probably go 3 or 4 cuts before I'd even need to clean it. So as you can see, there is some collection there, but nothing like I would have gotten without the graphite. I will say that this lawnmower is quite old and it's pretty rough underneath. There was a lot of rust buildups on it. If you did this to a new lawnmower, it would have even better results. So guys, it truly is over 100 degrees in the greenhouse today. I'm starting to break into a sweat. This is where I keep my push mower stored away so it stays nice and dry, and it dries out really quickly in the summer. A lot of people have asked me what is my favorite lawn or garden tool, and it's actually these headphones. It's a digital AM/FM. It provides ear protection, but the reason I like it so much, it just blocks out the rest of the world and allows me to spend time in my garden completely alone and isolated, whether I just want to listen to nothing or pick up some sounds. So I'll put a link to these in the description. I actually have 2 pairs of these. One I keep at a relative's house that I cut their grass, and I keep another pair here in my greenhouse that I can use. So anyways, if you'd like a pair, they're really great. Guys, I really appreciate you watching. And if you have any questions about this video or any previous video, I hope you'll become a public subscriber first. I get anywhere from 100 to 300 comments a day, and it's nearly impossible to answer them all. So always give priority to subscribers to the channel. So guys, have a great day.